Hi there, I'm Beatrix. My sister banned me from her wedding, said being a plumber didn't fit the image. They used the house I renovated, the pipes I fixed, the work I gave without thanks, then pretended I didn't exist. But what happens when the person you erase stops fixing what you keep breaking? You want to know how their big day fell apart? Let me show you. It was the kind of summer heat that made your clothes stick and your patience run thin. I was standing in the middle of my cousin's backyard in Naperville, holding a paper plate stacked with lukewarm potato salad, watching the condensation drip off a red Solo cup in my other hand. The grill was going. Someone had a country playlist running too loud through a dented Bluetooth speaker, and a few kids were already crying near the inflatable bounce house. It was the usual family cookout. Same crowd, same faces, same jokes that hadn't aged well. I was debating whether the deviled eggs had been sitting out too long when I heard my name. "Hey, Beatrix!" It was my cousin Lorna, coming in from the patio, sunglasses perched on her head like she hadn't changed since high school. She waved a beer bottle at me. "You gonna be early to fix the pipes before the big day, or what?" I blinked. The laugh that followed from a few people nearby wasn't cruel. It was worse. It was casual, easy, like what she said didn't sting at all. Like I wasn't the one who'd stayed late last Christmas to unclog Aunt Reenie's sink, or the one who rerouted Mom's entire bathroom plumbing during the pandemic, just because she didn't want strangers in the house. But sure, I was just the family plumber, the help. I looked over toward my mother, who had caught the comment. She smiled gently and turned back to the pasta salad, didn't say a word. I gave Lorna a polite half smile. "Well," I said, "depends on if the venue's got hot water or not." She laughed again, oblivious, and drifted off toward the cooler. It wasn't the words that did it. It was the ease of them, like my presence, my work, everything I'd given, had become invisible. Later that week, I came home from a long job patching a burst water main in Aurora. My back was aching, and my hands were still red from the heat when I saw the envelope on my kitchen counter. Off-white cardstock, gold trim. I already knew. The wedding invitation. I opened it slowly, not because I expected anything, but because I was afraid of what I already suspected. It wasn't addressed to Beatrix Monroe, sister of the bride. No. My name appeared in a small, thin font on the bottom half of the second page, under a section titled Staff Assistants, Vendor Notes. Vendor. Not guest. Not family. Vendor. At first, I thought it was a mistake, some clerical thing. Maybe someone sent the wrong file to the printer. But when I called to ask, just to clarify, Jocelyn's voice was breezy. "Oh, don't take it the wrong way," she said. "We just grouped folks by function, you know? You're good at things, and we didn't think you'd mind." I didn't say anything. I just stood there holding the phone, letting the silence stretch. I heard her sigh. "It's not like we didn't invite you," she added, with that familiar tone of faux kindness she used when she borrowed my tools without asking. I ended the call with a short, "Okay," not because I agreed, but because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of hearing how fast my heart was racing. That night, I didn't eat. I didn't sit on the couch. I just stared at the card, now pinned to my fridge with a cracked magnet. Vendor, staff assistants. It stayed up for 3 days. On the 4th, I walked to the fridge, peeled it off slowly, and laid it flat on the table. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just whispered aloud. "So that's how they see me." No one noticed that I didn't show up to help with the backyard decorations the following weekend. No one asked why I didn't text back in the family group chat about the floral arrangements. And for the first time since we were kids, I didn't swing by Mom's to fix the dripping hose or replace the broken porch light. It wasn't spite. It was a quiet kind of pulling back, like when you stop watering a plant that never belonged to you in the first place. The shift was slow, but it was real. That Sunday, after my grocery run, I walked into the kitchen, dropped my keys in the bowl, and opened the drawer under the microwave. There, tucked between old coupons and a roll of duct tape, was a small silver box. Inside it was the wedding gift I'd bought for Jocelyn months ago. A custom-engraved French press, something elegant and expensive, the kind of thing she'd show off on Instagram with a fake humble caption like, "So blessed." I held it for a moment. Then I turned, opened the trash bin, and dropped it inside, lid and all. It made a soft thud, satisfying in a way I hadn't expected. By Monday evening, I'd already forgotten the weight of the trash can lid closing. I cooked a quick dinner, nothing special, just sautéed vegetables over rice, and sat at the edge of my couch, phone in hand, scrolling through Instagram stories out of habit more than interest. Most were harmless: dog videos, workout selfies, someone's homemade lasagna. But then a photo stopped me cold. It was a group shot. My mother, Jocelyn, and a few of our aunts and cousins gathered around a table at what looked like a restaurant. There were pastel gift bags in the background and a floral sign that read, "Rehearsal ready." Champagne flutes sparkled, everyone tagged. Except me. I tapped through again just to be sure. Still no tag, no mention, no text invite, nothing. Something about that photo dug deeper than I expected. Not because I wanted to be there, God knows I didn't, but because they didn't even pretend to want me there. I opened another app and searched the name of the restaurant printed on the backdrop, one of those trendy farm-to-table places with overpriced wine flights. After 2 redirects, I found the number for their events coordinator and called. "Hi," I said, forcing a light tone. "I was just checking on a guest list for an upcoming wedding dinner this Friday, the Monroe Trask party." The woman on the phone was polite, clicking away on her keyboard. "Let me pull that up." "Okay, yes, we have them here. Who are you looking for?" "Beatrix Monroe." A pause. Then, "Sorry, I'm not seeing that name. Are you sure you're on the list?" I let out a short breath. "Guess not." She apologized, not knowing what for. I thanked her and hung up. I sat there for a while, the silence in my apartment suddenly louder. The fridge hummed. A delivery truck rattled by outside. I stared at the pale light on the ceiling and wondered, had I really expected anything different? Eventually, I picked up the phone and called my mother. She answered on the second ring with that rehearsed warmth she reserved for church ladies and bank tellers. "Hi, sweetheart, everything okay?" "I just had a quick question," I said evenly. "Is there a rehearsal dinner this Friday?" Another pause. "Oh, yes. Just a small thing for the family. Jocelyn didn't want to make it a big deal." "I wasn't invited." She sighed, like the conversation was inconvenient, not hurtful. "Honey, you're always working out of town. We didn't want to burden you. It's easier this way." That phrase again. Easier this way. Like my presence was a logistical problem they'd finally solved. "You didn't think to ask?" I pressed, my voice still steady. She chuckled softly, like I was being overly sensitive. "You know how Jocelyn is. Everything's planned to the minute, and you're so independent. I figured you'd rather skip the chaos." No apology, no regret. Just a casual rewrite of reality where they weren't being cruel. They were being practical. I ended the call shortly after, claiming I had a client hold on the other line. I didn't. I just couldn't listen to her make it sound like exclusion was some kind of favor. Later that night, I stepped outside to the small lot where I park my work truck. The air smelled like cut grass and old pavement. I unlocked the back, pulled open the panel, and reached for my toolbox. It wasn't dirty. I cleaned it every Friday like a ritual. Still, I wiped it down again, my fingers lingering on the initials I'd scratched into the corner years ago. BM, in all caps. I didn't cry. I just stood there thinking, they didn't forget me. I'm just the piece they don't need to rehearse around. Back inside, I made tea and sat in front of my laptop, where an email from a client waited. An urgent pipe refitting scheduled for the same weekend as the wedding. I stared at it a moment before hitting delete. Then I opened the group chat labeled Monroe Family Plus and removed myself. One by one, I backed out of the other threads. Jocelyn's bridal shower group, the Just Girls thread, even the family holiday planning chat. No announcement, No explanation, just quiet exits. It felt like slipping out the back door at a party no one noticed you came to. Before bed, I walked to the wall calendar hanging in the hallway outside my bedroom. The wedding date was still marked in neat blue ink, August 18th, circled with a little heart I'd added months ago before I knew better. I pulled the marker from the drawer, paused, then yanked the cap off. The heart vanished first. Then the date. Then the whole square turned black under the pressure of the permanent ink. I stood there staring at the smudge, breathing in the scent of the marker like it was cleansing something deeper. I stood in the hallway a moment longer, watching that thick black square on my calendar, like it might blink first. It didn't. Eventually, I turned off the hall light and made my way to bed. Sleep came late, the kind where your body rests, but your mind chews everything to pieces. When the sun came through the blinds the next morning, I didn't feel rested, just sharper. I brewed a strong cup of coffee and sat at the counter, phone in hand, not even pretending to scroll aimlessly this time. I knew what I was looking for. Jocelyn's bridal party had been busy overnight. Photo after photo filled my feed, brunch at that rooftop bar downtown, gift bags with handwritten notes, a custom neon sign that read, "The Trasks." But it wasn't the champagne flutes or matching satin robes that got me. It was the background, brick walls, archway framed in ivy, the old oak tree by the side path. They were hosting the wedding at our childhood home. Not just any backyard bash. This was a full-blown event, complete with tents, lighting, and string quartets rehearsing in the grass I used to mow with a push-behind mower every Saturday before Dad passed. I clicked one photo, then another. My hands grew still. The caption read, "Family history, heritage charm, a venue full of love." Her best friend wrote under one picture, "It's giving Martha Stewart meets HGTV. Love when a house feels luxurious and lived in." Funny. I knew exactly which part of that floor had been replaced after a pipe burst under it, because I'd fixed it, alone. On a February weekend, 6 years ago, while everyone else was at some cousin's baby shower. I'd bought the new boiler when the old one cracked, called in favors to get it installed under budget, bled the pipes, resealed the crawl space, and hand-dug trenches when the ground was too frozen for machinery. No one offered to help. They just assumed I'd do it. And I did. I always did. Until now. I stared at the photos and read the captions again. Restored by the family. By the family. Not once did my name appear. Not even a shout-out in the comments. I was watching strangers sip wine on a porch I rebuilt, smile under a trellis I reinforced, toast under lights I wired. For a second, I laughed. It wasn't loud or bitter, just one of those dry exhales that comes out when the absurdity becomes too obvious to ignore. I opened my file cabinet, bottom drawer. Inside was a red accordion folder labeled House 405 Trillium. My handwriting. I flipped through receipts, scribbled measurements, copies of permits I pulled under my license. It was all there. Copper piping invoices, hardwood planks I bought out of pocket, even the delivery slip for the backup sump pump I installed after that flood warning in 2018. I hadn't just helped maintain that house. I'd made it livable. They used what I built, and now they were using it to host the one event I wasn't invited to. I found a blank invoice sheet tucked between two contractor quotes. It was outdated, from a job I'd long forgotten, but the format still worked. For a moment, I considered filling it out seriously. Labor hours, material costs, consultation time. The total came to just under $28,000. I smiled. Not because I intended to send it. No, that would be too easy, and it would make them the center again. Instead, I printed the invoice, folded it in thirds, and placed it under the magnet on my fridge. The one that says, "Just so I remember." I didn't need their credit. I didn't need Jocelyn to tag me in her carousel of filtered moments. I needed the truth, for myself. I left the folder open on the counter, the edges of the papers gently curling from time and air. I looked down at the invoice one more time. A house doesn't stay upright by accident. Someone holds the beams in place. Someone patches the leaks. Someone pays attention when no one else wants to. And they got to pretend it was a community project while pushing me to the margins. I closed the folder slowly and whispered to the quiet kitchen, "They get to pretend, but I remember." I left the folder on the counter, walked into the living room, and turned off the lamp. The apartment was dim, quiet. The kind of quiet that used to feel peaceful, but tonight it just felt full. Full of things unsaid, undone, unacknowledged. I wasn't angry, not in the usual way. I didn't feel hot or reckless. I felt precise. The next morning, I woke before my alarm and stayed in bed with the blinds still closed. My phone buzzed with the usual notifications, mostly ads, appointment reminders, and one Facebook memory. It was a picture from 4 years ago. Jocelyn had posted it back then, her sitting on the kitchen floor, red-eyed from crying, holding a mop and surrounded by water. Caption: "Pipe burst on a Sunday, bless this mess." In the background, half-blurred, crouched near the baseboard, was me, wrench in hand. Ponytail looped through the back of a ball cap. No one had tagged me. No one ever had. I clicked back to her current feed, and there it was. A fresh post from the wedding prep. A photo of the living room, decked out with vintage glassware and rented linens. The caption read, "This house has always been held together by love." Held together by what? That sentence hit harder than I expected. I got out of bed, walked into the bathroom, and sat on the edge of the tub. My eyes landed on the sink. Next to it, resting on the edge, was the same rust-stained wrench I'd used all those years ago. It hadn't moved far from my tool bag since. Not because it was broken, but because I always kept it close. I went back to the kitchen, pulled open the drawer under the microwave, and grabbed my phone. I hadn't opened Facebook in weeks, maybe months, but my password still worked. I took a photo. The wrench. A copper valve. A faint shadow from the window across the metal. No fancy filters. No story time. Just a caption. "Sometimes pressure is the only truth." I hit post. Then I closed the app. I didn't expect anything to happen, not really. It was just something I had to get out of me, like a slow exhale after holding your breath underwater for too long. I put my phone down, stepped into the garage, and opened my workbench drawer. I didn't have any jobs booked that day, and I wasn't in the mood to chase invoices. I wiped down a set of sockets, realigned a few ratchets, cleaned a level that hadn't seen daylight in months. Within 15 minutes, the notifications started. Ping, ping, ping. I let them come. I didn't check. I just kept working. At some point, the silence between the pings grew longer. Eventually, the noise stopped altogether. I stepped back inside to grab some water. As I passed by the counter, I glanced at the screen. Kimbra, the ever-loyal bridesmaid and Jocelyn's closest confidant, had commented a simple, "Ah?" That was it. No follow-up, no emojis. Just that small question mark, floating like a pebble in a still lake. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. I turned the phone face down and left it there. I wasn't looking for a fight. I wasn't aiming to ruin anything, but I also wasn't going to patch over a crack just because someone pretended not to see it. Back in the garage, I sat on the stool, the familiar scent of grease and pine shavings settling around me. My hands, finally still, rested on my knees. I thought about that phrase, held together by love, and I said out loud, just to the tools, to the workbench, to the walls that had never lied to me, if they don't like the sound of silence cracking, they shouldn't have made it this loud. That evening, as I heated up leftovers and watched condensation gather on the kitchen window, my phone buzzed again. A message from Jocelyn. 4 words. "Did you mean that post for me?" I let the screen dim without replying. I didn't sleep much that night. I didn't need to. My body had the kind of alertness that comes not from coffee or adrenaline, but from decision. The kind that makes you wake up before the sun without a trace of hesitation. I got dressed in old work pants and a flannel shirt I didn't mind sweating in, tied my hair back, and wheeled the industrial fan and backup lighting down the ramp from the garage into the truck bed. These were things I'd offered months ago, before the guest list came out, before I was erased from it. Back then, I was still part of the team, still the younger sister who could be relied on to make things function, to crawl under decks and check fuses when others were sipping mimosas. Now, I was just returning borrowed tools. Nothing more. By late morning, I pulled into the rear lot of the house, the same one I'd once wired for motion lights on my own dime. The wedding tent had already gone up on the back lawn, flapping gently in the breeze. White folding chairs lined the yard like little teeth. I parked by the utility shed and unloaded the dolly. As I rolled it toward the back steps, a young woman in all black, clipboard in hand, headset half tangled in her hair, stepped in front of me. "Excuse me," she said with a polite but firm tone. "Vendor entrance is around the side. You'll need to check in with the coordinator." I looked at her. She didn't know who I was, and that was fine. It meant I didn't have to explain. I nodded once, wordlessly, and pushed the dolly toward the gravel path leading to the side door. The wheels rattled with each step. My boots kicked up bits of mulch. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. Inside the garage, I placed the fans in the designated corner. The lighting kits followed. I wrapped the cords neatly, the way I always did, and left a note on the box. Returned as promised. B. As I was exiting through the side hallway, I heard a familiar burst of laughter outside the open window. Low, deep voices, joking the way men do when they're dressed in matching suits and trying to hide their nerves. I didn't mean to look, but something in me turned toward the sound. That's when I saw him. Dre? He was standing near the refreshment table, holding a bottle of water, laughing at something someone else had said. His hand curled loosely at the neck, just like I remembered when he used to lean against my kitchen counter while I fixed his leaky pipes. He hadn't changed much. A little grayer at the temples, a bit of soft around the jawline, but still smug in a way only someone confident in forgetting you can be. He caught sight of me before I could turn away. Our eyes met. There wasn't shock on his face, more like a flicker of embarrassment, the kind that slips in when the person you underestimated walks in through a door you thought they'd never reach again. He stepped toward me. "B?" he said, trying for warmth that didn't reach his eyes. "Wow, you still do plumbing?" I tilted my head and gave him a look as neutral as a straight edge. "Do you still pitch other people's work as your own?" I asked calmly. His mouth opened slightly, but no words followed. I didn't stay long enough to see if he found any. I turned and kept walking. My footsteps on the wood floor felt solid, certain. I didn't need to slam a door or raise my voice. He could sit with that silence, just like I had. Passing by the main foyer, a catering cart rolled by, nearly brushing my shoulder. The staff member apologized quickly, eyes darting to my utility belt. "Oh, sorry. I thought you were one of the setup crew." I didn't correct her. I nodded again, gave a half smile, and walked on. Outside, the wind had picked up. The tent flaps rustled louder now. Somewhere behind me, I heard a voice whisper, "Hey, who was that?" And then another, just loud enough to carry on the breeze, answered, "I think she used to fix things." I didn't flinch. I kept walking down the gravel path, the crunch of each step steady, measured. My truck was waiting, my work was done. I drove back in the slow shade of afternoon. The gravel had long stopped crunching beneath my boots, but the sound echoed anyway, somewhere in my ribs. After unloading the last piece of equipment, I didn't hang around. No conversations, no glances back. Just the kind of exit you don't get thanked for, but you remember making. By the time I was home, the sun had ducked behind the line of oaks across the lake. I changed into a soft hoodie, poured a ginger beer over ice, and stretched out on the couch, legs tucked under me like I wasn't waiting for anything. I wasn't. I'd already given too many pieces of my time, my skill, my silence. That's when the first video landed in my inbox. It came from Paige, A cousin's friend, who I hadn't spoken to since the last baby shower I was invited to, 3 years ago. Her message said, "Thought you'd want to see this. Wild." Attached was a 23-second clip. The frame was shaky, probably recorded with panic. Bridesmaids in pastel dresses were crowding a small hallway, fanning themselves, pointing toward the restroom door. Then a splash, screams. One girl yelling, "It's backing up! It's coming up through the floor!" And right there, just a glimpse, but unmistakable, a toilet overflowing, fast, ugly. The camera jerked. Someone dropped what looked like a clutch purse, and then the audio cut out as the phone's owner scrambled to stop recording. I blinked once, then again. I didn't smile, didn't sigh. Just reached for the remote and muted the television I hadn't been paying attention to. The silence was enough. Another ping. This time from a coworker. "Is this from your sister's wedding? People are tweeting about it." The link opened to a tweet with 2 blurry screenshots from what had to be the same scene. The caption read, "So, the bridal suite bathroom became Niagara Falls. Wet wedding / plumbing fail." I didn't need the hashtag, because I remembered the warning I'd sent Jocelyn months ago. I'd left her a voice memo, professional, polite, even though I was seething beneath every word. I'd said, "The upper pipes need replacement, not patching. That seal won't hold under full use. You'll have 50 guests running water nonstop." Her reply never came. The only message that remained from her was the one before that, months earlier. "Thanks, but we're going with someone more event-friendly." Event-friendly. That meant shiny tools and clean uniforms, not someone who showed up with dirt under her nails and no patience for nonsense. That meant someone who wouldn't remind the family that a beautiful house wasn't magic, it was labor. Another ping. This time, it was a screenshot from a friend of a friend of a friend, an Instagram story already deleted, a shot of the bride's gown, wet at the hem. Captioned briefly, "So much for the fairy tale." I recognized the pattern on the tile floor. I installed that tile. Back then, I had stayed up 2 nights in a row laying each piece by hand because no one else could afford a contractor. That wedding was unraveling in the house I'd stitched together, and I wasn't even there to see it. I got up, walked into the kitchen, and opened the fridge. Grabbed a bottle, twisted the cap, took a long drink. The lake outside the window had gone still, the surface like glass. A few ducks floated by in the reflection of the clouds. I didn't post anything, didn't gloat. I just let it happen. Somewhere, Kimbra had already deleted the video from her story, probably realized the bride didn't want more attention for the wrong reasons. There wouldn't be a statement. There wouldn't be an apology either. That would mean acknowledging the root of the problem. And everyone knew which pipe had burst. They just didn't want to say my name next to it. By 10, my phone had quieted again. No more pings, no new videos. But then, at 10:42 p.m., a voicemail. It was from my mother. Her voice was low, too low to be fake calm. There was no anger, just exhaustion. "Beatrix, something happened. The ceremony got interrupted, the plumbing. It caused a lot of trouble. Jocelyn's been crying for hours. We might need your help. If you're not too busy." That last part. If you're not too busy. As if I hadn't already been too busy to be included. I didn't hit play again. I didn't save the voicemail. I didn't even replay it for satisfaction. I just sat back down, pulled the blanket over my legs, and stared at the black screen of the TV. The room was still. No blinking lights, no buzzing interruptions. Just peace. I let the night swallow the silence. The screen on my phone dimmed again, then blacked out completely. My reflection flickered in it for a brief moment. Tired eyes, hair pulled back, face unbothered. I placed the phone face down on the side table, leaned into the couch cushion, and exhaled like I was shedding something I no longer owed anyone. It must have been past midnight when the next voicemail landed. I didn't rush to play it. I waited until I finished brushing my teeth, folding a load of laundry, and locking the back door. Only when I sat down again did I tap play. It was my mother's voice, heavy with something she wasn't used to carrying. Uncertainty. Beatrix, it's late, I know. I wouldn't call if it weren't. Jocelyn's falling apart. She won't eat. She won't talk to anyone. We don't know what to do anymore. I know you said you're not part of this, but if there's anything you can do, please. The please was the sharpest part. Not because I hadn't heard it before, but because I could tell it cost her something to say it out loud. I didn't respond. I didn't delete the message either. I just let it sit there. The next morning, while pouring coffee, I opened my email. A headline from one of those local wedding blogs jumped out. Disaster at the Dales, what went wrong? The article didn't name names, but the photos did. People in pastel heels stepping over towels in the bridal suite. A shot of the front porch flooded out to the gravel. One photo caught my eye. A side shot of the electrical fan I'd dropped off weeks ago. Still labeled with my handwriting on the side. Still spinning. A few hours later, a friend texted me a screenshot from Facebook. A comment thread on a now-deleted post by the groom's aunt. I thought this venue had everything handled, but I heard the plumbing was donated? By someone in the family who didn't even attend? Another comment followed quickly. Beatrix, right? Then, wait, she wasn't invited? And just like that, the thread was gone. Deleted. But not before the truth trickled out. Like water from a pipe, no one bothered to check twice. I didn't chime in, didn't post, but something about the silence afterward felt different. Not mine. Theirs. Mid-afternoon, I received a text from Jocelyn. It was just one word. Why? No punctuation, no context. I stared at it for a while. Let it glow there while I watched the sun move across the living room rug. Then, 2 hours later, I replied. Because I was invited to do the work, not to belong. No emojis, no anger. Just a sentence I'd carried in my chest for years, finally released into daylight. She didn't answer. And I didn't wait for her to. The next day, as I was setting up a new tool rack in the shed, my phone vibrated again. But this time, it wasn't a family message. It was a reposted video. The same footage that had vanished earlier from Kimbra's story. Only now it had a caption added to it, bold white text across the bottom. She warned them. I tapped the volume. The scene played, screaming, water, chaos. In the background, someone's voice, maybe the DJ, saying, "Oh no, not again." I closed the app and put my phone in the pocket of my hoodie. Funny how truth has a way of circling back, even when you don't chase it. Even when you're too tired to lift a finger. It seeps into the cracks they tried to cover, leaking louder with every attempt to ignore it. It wasn't my voice exposing them. It was their own oversight, shouting back in the form of consequence. The shed was quiet except for the occasional chirp of crickets echoing in from the trees behind the fence. I stayed out there long after dark, rearranging the drill bits, wiping down the table saw, organizing shelves that had never truly been disordered. There's a strange comfort in straight lines, and things that stay where you put them. Just as I was locking up, my phone buzzed again. I assumed it was another wedding blog headline, or some friend of a friend relaying the latest online reaction to the plumbing debacle, but when I glanced at the screen, it wasn't news. It was a screenshot from Tara, an old coworker who hadn't texted me in months. The image was grainy, clearly cropped from social media. Family forever, the caption read. The photo was from the reception. Jocelyn in the middle, flanked by my mother, aunts, cousins, even a few second cousins I hadn't seen since I was in braces. Everyone smiled like they were posing for a toothpaste ad. Everyone, except me. I wasn't cropped out. I wasn't edited away. I simply had never been there to begin with. Tara's message followed the image. This doesn't feel right. I didn't answer. There wasn't anything to say. She was right. It didn't feel right. But it also didn't hurt like it used to. Not anymore. I went back inside, kicked off my boots by the back door, and poured myself a glass of water. Then, with the same calmness I'd used to write out an invoice, I walked to the desk in my office and opened a new document. I typed one sentence. I hope next time the invitation comes before the apology. Underneath, I signed my name. Nothing fancy, no flourish. Just Beatrix. I printed it on heavy paper, the kind I used for framing permits. Folded it cleanly, tucked it into a plain white envelope. No note, no sticky tabs, just a return address in the corner. I didn't bother sealing it with anything but glue. There was nothing emotional left to contain. I drove it to the post office the next morning, dropped it into the outgoing slot without a second thought. It was addressed to Jocelyn's new home, the one she and her new husband had purchased 6 months ago. The same house I had helped them inspect before closing. The same one I'd reinforced the crawl space for, fixed the faulty sump pump, quietly rewired the guest bathroom light. A house, like a person, will only hold its weight for so long without proper care. By afternoon, I was on my porch, trimming back the hydrangeas. The air smelled like cut grass and concrete warmed by sun. In the distance, someone ran a mower. My neighbor waved from across the street. I waved back. Later, while transferring clippings into the bin, I got another ping. A wedding blog had picked up the story again, this time anonymously sourced. The headline read, "What really happened at the Dales? A case of family oversight?" In the comments, someone wrote, "Maybe if you exclude the one who fixed the pipes, things fall apart." The thread was a mix of laughing emojis, wedding horror stories, and speculation. I didn't engage. I didn't repost. Instead, I made a mental note to replace the garden hose coupling near the back fence. Something I'd promised myself I'd get to before August ended. 2 days passed before I received anything else. It came in the mail, no return address, no markings on the outside. Inside the envelope was a photograph, one I hadn't seen in decades. Me and my dad, standing in front of the garage on a late summer afternoon in 1999. I was maybe 9. He was kneeling beside me, pointing at something out of frame. I wore overalls, grease on my cheek. We were both smiling. But what caught me off guard wasn't the photo. It was the handwriting across the bottom, written in fresh ink. "You were always part of the house. Mom." I held it in my lap for a long time, unsure what to feel. Not because it moved me, but because it didn't undo anything. It didn't fix the months of silence, or the years of jokes dressed as affection, or the decision to leave me out of moments while still relying on my labor. But it was something, a fragment of recognition. I didn't cry. I didn't frame the picture or clutch it to my chest like a movie ending. I just placed it on the kitchen counter next to a grocery list and my gloves. Because no matter how late it came, the truth still landed in my hands, and I knew what needed to be done next. I woke up the next morning to the soft clink of my wind chimes and a single shaft of light crawling through the kitchen window, touching the photo of me and Dad where I'd left it. It hadn't moved, still just resting there. No frame, no ceremony, no altar. Just part of my life again. The kettle clicked off behind me, and I poured hot water over the last of my loose-leaf tea. While it steeped, I checked my phone. A forwarded clip waited in my inbox. The sender was a cousin I hadn't spoken to since before the wedding. One of those peripheral relatives who never picked sides, but always knew how to forward a link. The video was from a lifestyle influencer. Bright lighting, too much blush, teeth too white to trust. She was breaking down the bathroom wedding that had gone viral for all the wrong reasons. She smiled into the camera and said, "So here's the real twist, apparently. The bride's sister? The one who wasn't even invited? She was the one who actually designed the plumbing infrastructure for the venue." She paused for dramatic effect, then leaned in. "They called her a ghost in the foundation." The video kept playing, but I muted it. The phrase stuck in my ears long after the sound cut out. A ghost in the foundation. It sounded eerie, but also weirdly accurate. They built everything on top of me, then acted surprised when the walls didn't hold. Later that weekend, while out running errands, I got another message. This time, a voice memo from someone who worked with Kimbra. I didn't even need to open it. The text preview said enough. She should have been there. She always made things hold together. I deleted it. I wasn't collecting crumbs anymore. Not the sideways compliments. Not the revisionist whispers. Not the too-late regrets dressed up as empathy. I'd stopped waiting for people to say the right thing in public or in private, because by the time they finally did, it never sounded like honesty. It sounded like guilt trying to clean itself up. That afternoon, I drove 2 hours north to a wooded patch of land I'd signed for last month. Nothing built yet, just soil, pines, and silence. The property sloped gently toward a lake that shimmered even in gray weather. I stood on the future porch spot with my boots pressing into the damp earth. This time, every screw, every bracket, every wire would carry my name. The permits were already filed. The blueprints were folded neatly in the passenger seat of my truck, right beside a thermos and a hard hat with my initials on it. A small cabin, nothing fancy, but mine. No one else's name in the drywall. No one else's expectations lurking behind floral arrangements or half-hearted apologies. The following morning, I started the first step, staking out the corners. Each marker went in with steady hands. Not out of anger, out of clarity. There was power in not needing approval, in not needing the invite, in not asking if this time I would finally be included. The wedding may have faded from headlines, but the cracks it left behind had their own legacy. Not in the gossip, but in what it taught me. That silence can be sacred when you choose it. That walking away is not a failure. It's a blueprint for survival. 2 weeks later, I installed the first fixture on the cabin porch. A wooden chair. Simple, sturdy. Same model as the ones they rented for Jocelyn's reception. But this one had something theirs never did. A small brass plaque drilled clean into the backrest. It read, "For the one they forgot." And I sat in it. Let the wind press past my shoulders, the lake sigh against the shoreline, the past fall behind like old scaffolding I no longer needed. My phone buzzed one last time. Another repost. Another caption. No tag, no name. But the comment section knew. "They'll remember me every time something leaks," I whispered aloud to no one in particular. "But I won't be the one fixing it anymore. I've learned something the hard way. Just because you're the one holding things together doesn't mean people will thank you for it. Sometimes the more dependable you are, the more invisible you become. But let me tell you this. From one soul to another, silence can be powerful. Walking away, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, might be the most courageous thing you ever do. If you've ever been the one fixing everything, while everyone else took credit, you know exactly what I mean. It's not about revenge. It's about choosing peace over proving yourself to people who decided long ago not to see you. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been pushed aside by the very people who needed you most? Do you believe forgiveness has to come with reconciliation? Or is walking away enough? If this story touched something deep inside you, drop a 1 in the comments, or let me know where you're watching from. And if this didn't hit home for you, tell me why. I'm always open to hearing your side. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss the next story that might just speak to something you've been carrying for years. Thanks for being here. And remember, even the strongest beams crack when they're taken for granted. So choose where you stand, wisely.